Hi everybody, making you a little video today about my walk on Tecumseh Trail. Tecumseh is a totally different story about Greenville and the War of 1812. I may make another video about that if I can get there, but I have something else to talk to you about today. Extreme close-up, extreme close-up, extreme close-up. Sorry. You know, I'm a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln, and I live about a mile and a half away from a really big connection to Abraham Lincoln. And in this time of quarantine, I know we can get a little stir crazy sitting around, but you are allowed to go outside. You can take walks, make sure you keep distance, stay safe, wash your hands when you get back in, but we can go out for walks, and there's history everywhere you go. About a mile and a half from my house is a little town called Gettysburg, Ohio. And when I want to go out and get some exercise, I come to Tecumseh Trail. That is Tecumseh Trail right there. It's about, like I said, if you go about a mile and a half that way down this path, you'll come to the back edge of my property. And this Tecumseh Trail used to be a railroad bed. Trains used to come through here, which is how they make a lot of bike paths and walking paths in the park districts. This one is the old railroad bed that carried Lincoln's funeral train. When Lincoln was assassinated, first president to be assassinated, people were in mourning and they really wanted to see Abraham Lincoln one last time. And so embalming bodies and taking care of dead bodies so that people could visit with their loved ones one last time, that was a new technology. Just like railroads were a pretty new technology. Abraham Lincoln, he was a technological guy. He loved to practice with all the new weapons during the Civil War. He's the only president who had a patent for a way to get steamboats off of sandbars. He loved technology. So the fact that he was using all this new technology even after, or connected to this new technology, even after his death, probably would have made him really happy. People wanted to see Lincoln's body. So they had embalmed the body. They brought it on a funeral train, and you can see the route here. It left Washington, D.C., and started making its way through capitals like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, over to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to New York, New York, all the way up to Albany. And then it started coming across the Midwest, headed towards Ohio. It entered, the funeral train entered into Cleveland or near Cleveland, went down to Columbus. And on April 30th, at about 1:10 in the morning, the funeral train passed right by where I'm standing. And right here behind this placard is the old railroad depot. So people would have stood here. They wouldn't have, he didn't stop here. The body didn't stop here, but people would have stood here and watched Lincoln go by and paid their respects on the way to Greenville. Greenville is in that direction down the path, and the path stops right here for a while. But this old railroad bed, that direction is Greenville. That direction is Bradford, where they stopped for a few minutes to get wood and some water for their steam engine so that it could keep fueling on. And then further on down the line is Covington, and further on down the line there is Piqua. So there's a guy from Miami County who wrote a book about Lincoln's funeral train. I think his name's Scott Trossel, and the book is called Lincoln's Funeral Train. When you're ever allowed to go back to the library, I think they have it there. You can check it out. Lincoln made his way across here, and thousands of people stopped to pay their respects to Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to try to give you some time here. I'll start from the beginning. I'll give you some time. You can pause it. You can read all about Lincoln's trip across here. But it's kind of ironic for me because, you know, I'm a huge history nerd. I love Lincoln anyway. And I grew up where Lincoln grew up, in Lincoln City, Indiana. And my parents owned part of his dad's farm in Indiana for a while. And there's a national park there where my mom worked. It's where I grew up. It's where I fell in love with history. And so as a young man, I got to work at that park. I got to plant crops and harvest crops in the same field that Abraham Lincoln did when he was a boy, which is kind of a monumental thing, and most people don't ever get to do that. Now that I'm an adult, about a mile and a half, well, not even that, probably a half a mile behind my house is this old railroad bed where Lincoln's funeral train went. So as an adult, I'm now in a place where Lincoln made his last trip back to his final resting place in Illinois. So I have a lot of connections to Lincoln, a lot of connections to history, and I would suggest to you guys, we are allowed to go outside. We can go out in this quarantine. Like I said, Keep your distance. Make sure you wash your hands. Be safe. I don't want anybody to get sick or anybody to take that home to anybody that they love so that they get sick. But get outside. Walk along the paths. I know there's tons of bike paths around Troy. You can get on there. You can find placards like the one that's over here about the funeral train. Read about them. See what it's all about. I know one of the things you're going to see too, and I'll take you back to the placard so you don't have to look at me anymore. That's torture to anybody. One of the things about our bike path in Troy that's really cool is it goes along the Miami and Erie Canal. Again, I told you Lincoln loved technology. As a young politician, he was a member of a party called the Whig Party. And the Whig Party, the main focus of their platform, we're getting ready to talk about this real soon, probably this week, was something called the American system, where you tax citizens and then use that tax money to build internal improvements like canals, like the Miami and Erie Canal that goes through Troy, like this railroad bed that carried Lincoln to his final resting place, like the Transcontinental Railroad that opened up the West. So, and it's shortly after this we start hearing a phrase that we're going to really talk about this week called manifest destiny, the idea that God wanted Americans to spread from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. It was our destiny to do that. It was not even within our hands. God had already willed it to happen. And so whatever means necessary. Now that's a great thing for America as a country. Economically, it opens up new farmlands. We have a gold rush because of it. All kinds of different things happen. For other groups of people, it's not so great. The Native Americans, who we talked about with Jackson, who got driven to Oklahoma, all of a sudden they're in the way again. So they have to be driven further west. Other groups that don't want to give in to us have to be driven further west. The American Southwest, including California, Arizona, New Mexico, that was part of Mexico. And in order to make that part of the United States, one of two things had to happen. We either had to buy it or we had to beat them up and take it. And we chose to beat them up and take it in the Mexican-American War. So that didn't work out very well for those Mexican citizens who lived in those areas. So that's manifest destiny. And the reason people thought it was okay to do that is rooted in something else we'll talk about probably tomorrow, probably Monday, as we start looking at some of these sources. It's something called American exceptionalism, that America is better than everybody else. And because America is better than everybody else, again, that gives us the right to do whatever we want to do. And I would even go a step further than that. And for the people talking about manifest destiny, yeah, they were talking about America in general, but specifically, they were talking about white Americans. And so part of American exceptionalism, part of manifest destiny, includes an expansion of slavery and the allowance of slavery all by itself. It includes the wiping out of any Indian tribes who don't want to join us or do what we say. And all of that was allowed by those two philosophies, that idea of manifest destiny and the idea of American exceptionalism. And they're still around today. It's what that whole America is all about. When you hear people talking about that, we make fun of people for saying America and waving their flags. That's an idea of American exceptionalism, that it's okay to do whatever we want. It's okay to not pay attention to a stay-at-home order because we're America and we can go out and do what we want. Nothing's going to hurt us. Nothing's going to stop us. The reason so many people are dying from this disease is because they're not Americans. Well, diseases don't know nationalities. So please take this to heart. Take some lessons from history. Maybe you can use some of this for your connection questions by the end of the week to help you respond to our question for this week. And I hope you learned a little bit about Lincoln. I hope you learned a little bit about manifest destiny, a little bit about American exceptionalism and technology. And maybe I made you laugh once or twice, at least with the extreme close-up part. All right, talk to you later. Stay safe. Bye.